Today, we're cracking open a toolkit for clear thinking that's well over 2,000 years old. It comes from ancient India, and it's called Nyaya. And you should think of it less as a dusty old philosophy and more like an operating system for reality, a really rigorous method for figuring out what's true and how to argue for it effectively. So let's see how it all works.
So let's just start with a pretty wild idea, which is really the engine that drives this entire system. What if the path to ending all your pain, all suffering, wasn't just about faith or meditation? What if it was about a precise, razor-sharp, logical understanding of reality? I know, it sounds a little out there, but that's the radical claim we're going to explore.
And look, this isn't just my interpretation. It's right there, stated clearly in the very first verse of their foundational text. The mission is laid out plain and simple. If you can get true knowledge of these 16 specific things, you will achieve the supreme good. You'll be liberated from suffering. It's a direct cause and effect promise. Now here's the crucial part. What do they actually mean by true knowledge, or tattva jnana? This is not about memorizing trivia for a game night. We're talking about a specific kind of understanding, one that is absolutely definitive, completely free of doubt, and certain. It's about grasping the fundamental isness of things, cutting through all the noise and confusion to see reality exactly as it is. So why is this kind of knowledge such a big deal? Well, because according to one of the great commentators, Vatsyayana, our ignorance is the very first link in a chain reaction that keeps us trapped in a cycle of suffering. It works kind of like this. Because we're ignorant of reality, we develop faults. Wanting things we shouldn't, hating things we shouldn't. Those faults make us act. Our actions lead to rebirth, and rebirth always inevitably involves suffering. True knowledge is the tool that snaps that chain right at the very first link, ignorance. Okay, so if we need this super special chain-breaking knowledge, how do we get it? This is where the Nyaya system gets incredibly practical. It doesn't just point to a destination, it gives you the map and the gear. It gives you the tools. So let's look at the first and most important category, the valid ways of knowing. And the system is very, very specific about this. It argues that there are exactly 4, and only 4 reliable ways to gain true knowledge. Not 3, not 5, 4. These are your essential instruments, and they're called the pramanas. And here they are. First, you have perception, what you can see, hear, and touch directly. Second is inference, what you can logically figure out. Third is analogy, which is knowing something new by comparing it to something you already get. And fourth, testimony, the knowledge you gain from a source you can actually trust. Let's break them down. So our first tool, Pratyaksha, is the absolute foundation of everything. This is knowledge that comes from the direct, unfiltered contact between your senses and an object in the world. Seeing a cup, feeling the rain, hearing a bird sing. For Nyaya, this is the bedrock of reality. It's immediate, it's direct, and it's our most fundamental link to what's real. But obviously, we can't perceive everything directly. So that brings us to tool number 2, Anumana, or inference. And the classic example they use is just perfect for explaining it. You're looking at a distant mountain. You can't see any flames, but you do see a plume of smoke. What do you know with certainty? There's a fire. You've just used a sign that you can perceive, the smoke, to know a reality that you can't perceive, the fire. Now, this third tool, Upamana, is fascinating. It's really about how we connect words to things we've never seen before. Imagine a friend tells you about an animal called a gavaya and says, "Oh, it's basically like a cow." You've never seen one. Then later, you're hiking, you spot this cow-like creature, and it just clicks in your head, that must be what they call a gavaya. That aha moment, that flash of recognition where you connect the name to the thing through similarity, that's Upamana. And finally, we have Shabda, or testimony. This covers basically all the knowledge we get from other people. But, and this is a huge but, Nyaya is extremely strict here. Testimony is only valid if it comes from an apta, a completely reliable source. And this isn't just someone with a strong opinion. An apta has to have direct, first-hand knowledge of the subject, they have to genuinely want to communicate it accurately, and they have to be skilled enough to do it clearly. You need expertise, integrity, and clarity, the whole package. Okay, so we've got our 4 tools for knowing, but what are we actually supposed to use them on? That takes us to the second of those 16 categories we mentioned earlier, the pramanas. These are the specific objects we absolutely must understand to achieve liberation. You can basically think of this as the official syllabus for enlightenment.
The Nyaya system says you have to take your 4 tools and apply them to these 12 subjects until you understand them completely with 0 doubt. It's a whole map of reality. You start with the one doing the knowing, the self. Then you examine the equipment you're working with, your body, senses, and mind. Then you dig into the mechanics of the whole system, action, rebirth, and so on, before finally zeroing in on the big problem, suffering, and the ultimate solution, liberation. Now, what's so interesting here is that Nyaya wasn't just for quiet, personal contemplation. No way. This was a system designed for a world of fierce public debate. It provides a really detailed framework for how to argue properly, how to spot bad arguments, and how to actually find the truth together with other people. And they identified 3 very different kinds of debate. First, there's Vada. This is the gold standard. An honest discussion where everyone is using valid reasoning to try and find the correct answer. The goal is truth. Then there's Jelpa. That's just arguing to win, using whatever tricks and cheap shots you need to. And finally, you've got Vitanda. This is purely destructive debate. It's when someone just attacks your position without ever offering one of their own. Nyaya, of course, champions Vada. So to keep those debates productive and honest, Nyaya came up with a formal 5-step structure for making a completely bulletproof argument. The goal wasn't just to be right. It was to be so transparently right that nobody could misunderstand your logic. You had to walk your opponent through it, step by step. Let's see how this beautiful structure works. Okay, let's use our fire example again. You start with your thesis. The mountain has fire. Then your reason, because it has smoke. Now, the crucial 3rd step. You give a universal example everyone agrees on. Wherever there's smoke, there is fire, right? Like in a kitchen. Step 4, you apply that rule back to the specific case. This mountain has smoke. And only then finally do you state your conclusion. Therefore, this mountain has fire. It's a masterpiece of clear, persuasive reasoning. So why did the Nyaya school go to all this trouble to build such a rigorous system of logic and debate? Well, because they had to. They were defending a very specific view of reality against some incredibly smart counter-arguments from rival philosophical schools, especially from the Buddhist tradition. One of the biggest battlegrounds was the nature of the self. Nyaya argued that there's a single enduring self, an Atman, that stays with you through time. Their rivals, on the other hand, argued there's no permanent self at all, just a rapid-fire series of mental moments. And Nyaya's killer argument was memory. They asked, how can you say, I remember what I saw yesterday, if the I that saw it is completely gone, and a new I exists today? For them, the simple fact that we have memories proved there's a persistent self connecting our past and present. Another major debate was about the world itself. Nyaya defended realism, the common sense idea that there's a real world of objects out there, independent of our minds. Some rival schools argued that reality is mind only, that the external world is just a kind of projection of our consciousness. Nyaya's response was simple. They went right back to their first tool, perception. Remember, perception is defined as the contact between a sense organ and a real object. If you take away the real object, the whole process of knowing falls apart. And all this brings us right back to where we started. All of these tools, all these debate rules, all these detailed categories, they are not just for some intellectual game. They are all working in service of that one ultimate goal that was promised in the very first sutra. And that goal is apavarga, liberation. And pay attention to the very precise definition here. This isn't about getting to some blissful heaven. It is the absolute, permanent, and final end of all suffering. It's freedom from pain forever. For the early Nyaya school, the liberated self was kind of like a stone. It still exists, but it's completely free from all qualities, and that includes both pain and pleasure. So the most important point to take away is this. In the Nyaya system, logic and the rules of debate are basically tools for salvation. That's what it comes down to. Clear thinking isn't just a hobby or a useful skill. It is the direct and absolutely necessary path to ending your suffering and achieving ultimate freedom. And this leaves us with a final question to think about. We live in an age that is just saturated with misinformation, bad faith arguments, and constant attempts to mess with our sense of what's real. So what can we learn today from an ancient system that was meticulously designed not just to find truth, but to defend it, and to defeat doubt as a matter of ultimate life or death importance?